Hello and welcome to CIO News. I am Khushbu Soni, founder and chief editor at CIO News. Thank you so much to all our viewers for watching us today on our platform. This is our exclusive special episode on the International Women's Day 2023. Our theme for this year is Embrace Diversity and Equity. And I'm very, very excited to invite our guest for today. We have four wonderful Wonder Women who joined us. First, we have Mel Migrino, Chairman and President at Women in Security Alliance from Philippines. We have Tanya Jalal, the Networking and Security Go-to-Market Partner Development Manager at VMware from Dubai. We have Toyosi Udukaya, the Head of Business Intelligence at MasterCard Foundation from Nigeria. We have Vandana Verma, the Security Relations Leader APAC at Sync. She's from India. Thank you so much to all you wonderful women for joining us today on this panel discussion. And it is going to be a great conversation since I have people across the world joining us, and it'll be wonderful to learn the perspectives across region, what's happening specifically around this topic. So really looking forward to it.
Thank you so much, Khushbu.
Thank you.
And thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you. Nice to be here today.
Fantastic. First of all, wish you all a very happy International Women's Day 2023.
Likewise, same to everyone here. What a pleasure to be with some other amazing, incredible women on this day recording this this episode.
To begin, I first wanted to touch upon the topic once, that is embrace diversity and equity. It has been wonderful for all these years to see the support that women has got across the world. I know there is a lot of work required, but still, I think looking at women at this stage, there is a lot of work that's gone. There are a lot of associations, forums talking about it, spreading awareness. It's wonderful, we've seen a lot of successful women. There are women who are growing up the ladder. So it is really great. And hence that is one of the reasons while we are embracing diversity, we also wanted to touch about equity. So this year we want to talk about equity as well as diversity, right? And also for the fact that we know even on the equity front, we know a fair treatment, access, opportunities, and advancement is needed for all people, so that they can, identify their own best and come out, in the society and work towards it, right? So it is really great that we are going to be talking about it today on this special day. While we are embracing diversity, let's embrace equity as well. So to begin with, I want to put across my first question to all my panelists to understand what's their thought on today's topic.
So, so with equality and equity, obviously it's evolved a lot over the last few years, and we're seeing a lot of organizations that are embracing on the private sector level, embracing what equality is, what equity is, educating people on what it is. And it's a very important topic. But I think at this stage, we're at a point where we now have to embrace more practical approaches to equity, to actually implementing equity specifically. And equity is different from equality, right? Because equity aims for fairness through customization, essentially, right? Based on individual needs and circumstances. So it's almost more nuanced, more deep, more interesting, and more necessary. So I'm quite excited to have this conversation because it would be interesting to hear how organizations in different parts of the world are potentially embracing equity. And that doesn't mean the specific organizations that each of the panelists are working at, but rather more generally, you know, what is happening within those societies, within those private sectors. So I think it's a great topic idea, and there's a lot of work that still needs to be done. But I have to say, I'm generally an optimist, and I think we have come a long way. I personally work at VMware, and VMware does a lot to embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion at a global level, but even at the local level at different offices across the world. And that to me is quite inspiring. And I would hope that other organizations are taking the lead in doing similar work.
Great, fantastic. Thank you, Tanya. Vandana, Mel, if anyone of you would like to add.
Sure. Mel, do you want to go first?
Yeah, quick one. Yeah. So actually, I think this topic is very timely. Well, primarily because like in my case, I'm running a women in tech organization here in the Philippines. So every time I will talk to male executives, they would say, oh, it should be gender equity. It shouldn't be gender equality, right? So I think the overall theme of the IWD for this year is very timely. It's very relevant. This is a very good venue for us to really clarify what's really the difference. But technically speaking, you know, equity should be an enabler of equality. So I think that's the reason why gender equality is the one that is part of the global sustainability agenda, right? And I think with this amazing women actually in this panel, we would be able to showcase different use cases and eventually promote, right? So basically, those are my thoughts around this theme. Thank you.
Amazing. And I think Tanya and Mel, they've captured it accurately. Interesting times are here, indeed. And I will look at it from an angle of diversity. And I remember over the weekend, I was discussing diversity with a friend, and she just didn't get it. She was like, okay, why do you need a woman there? Why do you need a minority in this group? So as much as we've made a lot of progress, people still don't understand that as many groups still need to be represented. And when you have diversity, it's also diversity in terms of intelligence, in terms of skills, in terms of how you think of things, in terms of innovation, diversity in terms of creativity. You know, people just look at it from an angle of why should a woman be there? And she asked me and said, oh, all the women that have been in leadership, what have they done for you? But it's deeper than that, it's beyond that, you know? So people just look at it from a me angle to say, okay, so why do I care if this person is there? So there's still a lot of education to be done. We've made significant progress in the last 20 years, at least that I have been very actively in the space, but I think we still have a lot to do in that space in terms of education. And we've also seen that organizations that have embraced diversity, they've been more profitable, they've been more, it's a more sustainable model for any business, you know. So I think it's going to be an exciting time in the coming years, and I'm really happy that these conversations continue to grow.
Yeah. To add on to what my fellows panelists have said, that this is one of the topic which needs discussion, which needs the talk, because we need to educate ourselves first that what exactly equality and equity is, because a lot of times we don't understand that. And especially for organizations, they need to make a balance that diversity and inclusion is important, but at the same time, it is not like we want to fill the numbers. It is about embracing those people as well. At the same time, we want to bring in those communities, those marginalized people. But then at the same time, we're like, because we have a quota to fill this, so we're just filling it. Yeah. And we need to recognize those biases. And if we do not recognize those biases, it will never be what we want. It will grow. It is growing. We can see that there is a change which is happening, but it'll be very slow change. It'll take time. And we need to create that culture within organizations, be it in the form of policies, procedures, maybe talking about it, advocating about it, because till the time we don't engage in those outreach programs, till the time we don't feel that, yes, this is the need, whatever we do, how many programs we have, it is not going to be as successful as we want by the stats, by the numbers. So it should be measurable progress or process. That's what I feel, because if we don't measure it, and if we don't put right efforts in it, it's going to be a fail in the end.
Absolutely. Great. I think it's so good to hear that this is a conversation that is already being started at all the regions, and it is fantastic to get the perspective so far. To begin, I would want to put across my first question for you, Toyosi. What progress have you seen on gender equality, in fact, diversity in your life and work?
Thank you so much for the question. When I look back in my life and in terms of my experience, I think the major areas I've seen significant progress in terms of equality is in education and also in the workplace. And I say education because I recall growing up as a child. So my mom had the opportunity to attend. She has a degree and she attended as a young person. And I remember each time we were watching maybe the news together or something, she would say, oh, I remember this person. And I said, how do you know them? And she says, we were in the university together. And I asked her, do you know everybody that you went to university with? And she said, yes, because we're just very few ladies in the university. I think she told me maybe about 100 of them or something in the entire college. And she said, so she knew practically everyone. And, that tells you, but right now, I didn't even know all the ladies in my class when I was in the college. So that tells you how far we've come. No doubt, we've had more people embracing post-secondary education, but at the same time, we've also had a significant increase in percentage of women and girls and ladies, embracing education from primary to secondary to post-secondary. So for me, I think that's one area I've seen significant progress. I think in the workplace too, like I know Tanya also talked about VMware. VMware, is it VMware? Yeah. Yeah, so many organizations, like my organizations, practically every organization I've also worked for in the past, they are very deliberate about diversity, about equality and equity. Yes, they still have a long way to go, but there's been significant progress in the workplace too. So I think for me, those are the two areas I've seen, education and workplace. However, an area I'm really looking forward to see more is in politics, is in government. As a child, I dreamt of being a politician, but over the years, that dream I don't think that dream will come to pass. And that's because it doesn't seem like the climate is favorable for women at this point in time. So I'm really looking forward to see increasing participation of women in politics, in government, in parliament, and so forth and so on. That's one area I think there's still a major gap in my own world. So, but education, workplace, I think there's significant progress, and I'm really looking forward to more in these areas.
Fantastic. Very well said, Josie. My next question is, Mel, for you. Why equality is a must-have, diversity is a must-have. How can we bring in equity? To begin with, what is your thought on the difference between equality and equity, and why is equity a must-have as well?
Okay. Yeah. So I think so. Let's go back first to the basic definitions, right? So when we say gender equality, it is all about exercising your rights, actually individuals' rights. It could be responsibilities as well as the opportunities, and it is not actually determined by the gender that you have at birth. Equality is going to be, a hard to reach dream if there is no gender equity. So for us to actually aspire for equality among the different genders that we have, which is basically our ultimate goal, then each gender should be provided, I believe, with the necessary or adequate support to actually cater for the different needs of the individuals. While gender equity is really about looking, focusing and respecting people without any biases, any discrimination, regardless of their gender. Gender equity practically disrupts the belief of the male gender as the main authority. Through equity, it gives all genders the choice to actually climb up the ladder as a way to support or to compensate any of the former biases that were set forth. So I think, let me give an example. So let's say the right to avail of, let's say, a government subsidy through, let's say, e-commerce, right? So in the context of equality, if you look at equality per se, without taking into consideration equity, we say that, okay, so everyone is practically entitled, right? But with equity, let's say, taking the center stage as a push or an enabler for equality, through equity, this will make sure that all genders will have the facility for financial inclusion. Hence, let's say, one gender, so I'm no longer pinpointing this if this is male or let's say female, or let's say trans, right? So let's say one gender is, would be needing support or will be lacking a push in terms of financial inclusion. And if one person cannot have this facility, appropriate support will be extended to him or her, and ensure that there is a mechanism, right? There is a set of mechanism tools for this person to actually avail of the benefit. So I think that's where equity comes in. And then, of course, in the end, the tail end really is for gender equality or equality of rights and opportunities. So this in the end establishes the full essence of equality. So thus these two comes practically hand in hand. So in terms of in terms of your question earlier on how to actually promote, there's actually a lot of ways wherein you can actually promote this. Our session today is one of the ways to actually promote it. We can promote it as well coming off from the basic building block of the society, which is the family. And then going to the academic sector, as well as to the different sectors of the society, such as government, as well as the business sectors as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Mel. Wonderfully put. My next question is for you, Tanya. On continuation to that, how do you think, how can we embrace, equality, diversity, and equity effectively?
Great question, because I think effectiveness is really important, and it's often lost to a lot of people who are not directly within that space trying to do something about it. There's also a lot of effort around embracing equality and equity that can sometimes go wasted, I think. So the way that I see it, embracing it effectively, right? Effectively in terms of having outcomes that actually benefit people, requires an effort that is deliberate, and it requires an effort that is sustained. And it requires seeing the whole issue from a very holistic perspective, right? And when I say holistic, I mean we have to zoom out and see all of the different aspects and barriers that perpetuate or that don't allow for us as a society to fully embrace equality and equity. And that includes structural stuff, it includes institutional change, and includes societal things, right? So I think both our panelists who just spoke hinted at what happens when people don't really fully understand equity, right? Or Toyosi, you mentioned a story of someone who didn't really see what the point of diversity is. And so here's where we have to kind of take a multi-pronged approach to targeting the issue. And the way that I see it is there are different aspects. First, obviously, there's education. I think as a society, we have come a long way in doing this. This panel is one testament to that, but we've also there are tons of papers out there. There's tons of campaigns to raise awareness, to challenge biases. We're educating future generations as well to be more aware of cognitive biases that they might make, logical fallacies, implicit biases that they might have when they're making decisions or interacting with other people, right? Even when it comes to tech and AI, we know that we as generally, we're putting a lot of pressure on any organization that is relying on tools that are not of human intelligence to make decisions to be able to tackle bias, right? So I doubt we will propel forward into a future in which those organizations that are developing tools to help humans make decisions will also not be held to this, will also not be held to the same standard of bias and equality that we expect from human beings. So that's a positive step forward. And there's a lot of education around it. We can provide comprehensive information about the history, the culture, experiences of diverse cultures. And I think we do this generally quite well, right? But the second, and I think the more tangible parts, and this is where it becomes increasingly important, are areas like policy and legislation. So we do need to, on a global scale, right, enforce laws and policies that ensure equal access to opportunity. And this in the traditional sense, we've seen this in the form of policies like affirmative action, but we'll need to see more nuanced policies that will evolve as we identify the needs of individuals in that nuanced way, right? And the other few more kind of tangible areas will be advocacy. So we should encourage people to advocate and advocate for change, because historically throughout human history, that's how we embrace change, right? And also economic and social support. So on the legislative level, we will need to provide support to disadvantaged communities and individuals to also help us figure out what the underlying causes of inequality and inequity are. So I would say we're kind of, if we take those four kind of areas, education, policy, legislation, economic support, and quote unquote, or advocacy, we've come a long way along on education, but the others kind of still need deliberate and sustained effort. And we'll need people who care about this to actually work in those spaces and do something about it. Yeah,
absolutely. Fantastic pointers. My next question is, Vandana, for you. How can equity help in treating people based on their needs with a view of creating an equal outcomes?
Sure, thank you. I would add on to what the other speakers said, and even Tanya mentioned really well when it comes to equity. Now, equity can help in treating people based on their needs. And what it means is that we create equal outcomes by recognizing and addressing the barriers that we have around. Because once we say, okay, let's start giving these things to people, but we need to recognize their needs first. So equity is about fairness, which means recognizing that people have different needs and starting points, and providing them the resource that they actually need, rather than giving some generic thing, because it's very, very important. The trainings that they want. Some people say we want technical trainings, let's give them. Some people say there are certain kind of needs that they have. Equity also means, or help in treating people right, by acknowledging that some groups have historically been disadvantaged. So taking active steps to address those inequities, that's very, very important. Another thing is, it also includes we providing them targeted support and resources of those communities which are I would say unsung, or maybe low communities, maybe people with disabilities, or people of different color, different age group. It is very important to provide right kind of information, right kind of resources. Think of a person who's into army, and now the person is getting retired, or a person who's a veteran getting retired. So they are really good when it comes to security from a physical standpoint. But when we add the information security to it, they can be a really good resource. Similarly for tech, I think we have a lot of bandwidth, a lot of resources which we can share with them. And also we can create a more place for them, so that everyone has access to those opportunities, so that they can thrive. It is not like, okay, they've done their service and they're done. No. Or they are growing in IT and they're done. No. It is more about including things like equal access to education, healthcare, job opportunities. That's very, very important, where they have equal access to these basic resources. Because if they don't have access to these basic resources, things are going to fall apart. So recognizing those barriers, to providing targeted support, to prioritizing inclusion, addressing those historical inequalities or the biases that we have in our own minds and that we see in the community. And I think that is not an easy way to remove them completely, but at least we can bit by bit improve those things, so that everyone can be part of these equities where we can balance it, we can respect each other. Because the question is very well thought through that what about respecting those individualities? So equity, recognizing that everyone has those priorities, and then we need to prioritize diversity and inclusion at the same time.
Absolutely. Absolutely fantastic. Tercy, my next question is for you. With the help of diversity, how can women ensure that their opportunities are visible to those away from the workforce?
That's a very interesting question, and thanks for asking that. I think one of the ways that women can ensure the opportunities are visible to those away from the workforce is first to really share about our stories. I think women are not talking about our stories enough. We're not talking about our journey. We're not talking about the opportunities we have taken advantage of. I think that's a very, very important thing. Women typically want to have the perfect answer, the perfect life before we share. We don't really share little wins. We don't share little progresses. I think we need to start by sharing those stories. And you'll be surprised that those little wins could be an encouragement to somebody out there who has given up, and think maybe there's no opportunity for me. So I will start by saying, share your little wins, how you've taken advantage of, some of the equality opportunities, how you've raised your hand, how you've put yourself out there, how somebody has been able to support you, and how you've also supported people. So I think for me, that's number one, because these stories and these things that we hear, they actually give the next generation the hope that, I can also make it. Yeah, it might not be a perfect world, but the opportunities there. So that would be my first charge. I think the second thing I would say is also around creating the opportunities. I know that Tanya mentioned things around policies, systems, very, very important. When women are also in the place of authority, we can also influence policies that will drive equality. And based on that, we can also share, let people know as well. And also, if you're not even able to create, you can share the ones you know. Women, we see so many opportunities, we see things happening, then just bring people along, tell them you can do this as well, And of course, most importantly, is around using yourself as a role model, mentoring, putting yourself out there. Sometimes it's not easy because you appear to be vulnerable. You also have to give a lot of time. But I think in our own little spaces, if you can share our wins, share our stories, mentor people around, people still in school, people out there, and also influence policies and share what we know about opportunities, I think it'll be amazing. And it will make the journey, progress a little further than where we are now. Thank you.
My question is equity a long-term and a sustainable solution? I mean, if yes, then how can equity address the imbalanced social systems?
Yeah, it's a great question. The answer is a resounding yes. Equity can be a long-term and sustainable solution for how do you call it, imbalanced social systems, right? So the reason for that is because it directly addresses some root causes of inequality, right? And the whole point is to provide support, to have resources, create opportunities for those who historically have not had the same opportunities, right? So the most obvious way, top of mind when I read that question, was that it helps to address the issue of disparities, right? Reduction of disparities. And essentially this is the gap between those who are very, very privileged and those who are not. So the whole point is, of course, to reduce disparities so that we all have equal access to opportunities, but also to outcomes. And this should be based on, again, the customization aspect, which is at the foundation of equity, which is recognizing and acknowledging what the individual needs and individual circumstances are that require reduction of the gap between the advantaged and the disadvantaged. Second, I would say that it absolutely helps to promote a very important foundation of any liberal society that hopes to progress economically and socially, and that is promoting social justice, right? So the whole principle of equity is based on social justice, and the whole point is to advocate for fairness and non-discrimination. So to me, in fact, it's actually baffling for any society that doesn't want to embrace equity, because these seem to be the underlying realities and underlying truths that every human being should have access to. And I think it does also enhance sustainability, right? So equity does kind of recognize that development, especially sustainable development, requires for us to address social, economic, and environmental factors as well, in a way that's integrated. So again, I often like to point people to when we're building these systems and when we're thinking of how to architect the future, I point people to Fridtjof Capra, who's an academic and philosopher and professor, who coined popularized the whole concept of the systems view of life. So when we are crafting future societies, we should see it again from a holistic and integrated perspective. And then and only then can it be a long-term sustainable solution for society. So it will have to completely involve revamping, going back to the drawing board and revamping how we're seeing different societies and sectors of societies interacting, and how each interaction affects the other, so that we can put them back in balance, so to say.
Absolutely. Wonderful. I think we spoke about equity. What are the areas that we need to look at to start embracing equity as well? And I think those are wonderful pointers. And I'm very happy that at least we all are thinking about it and we want to start working towards it, right? This is a step that we start this year. We take a step towards it and start working towards it. So it is really fantastic to learn all the perspectives from all the regions. Going back to diversity and giving opportunities to women at all stages of life, I have one question for all of you. If you can tell us, we've often seen that women have issues after their matrimonial breaks or their pregnancy breaks to come back and start their career. There have been times that they have to look at their career from scratch. So I wanted to put this across question for women who is facing a challenge in this area, and how they could really look at having equal opportunities at that area, right? So after their pregnancy breaks or the matrimonial breaks. So maybe if I'm sure all the panelists here are quite experienced enough and are at the leadership level here. So you've been through certain challenges like these, or if you've not, how do you do it is something that I would want to do hear from you all. Maybe we can start with Mel, to see Tanya, and then Vandana.
Yeah, actually, thank you for the question. This question relates a lot to me because in my throughout my journey, I started to not to have children actually, but after realizing all of this stuff around equality and equity, and now that I'm running Women in Security Alliance Philippines, it practically changed my views, which I would like to share with you. I think my thoughts would be around, we have seen women who experience, I would call, setbacks after getting married, wherein priorities were actually divided between pursuing a career, establishing a family, having a child, and of course, eventually, maturing and growing your family, right? I have seen in some organizations that women who put importance and priorities on family matters came late in the ball game. And I'm pretty sure you also did, which should not be the case. So for me, this is a cultural mindset that is somehow traditional and or old, and this needs to evolve. So first of all, women should be given the chance. So like what I've been saying in the local women's forum here, so a chance, an opportunity to lead, to actually take on key projects in their organizations with the commitment set forth, right? And of course a balance, time for work and family. So for as long as expectations and commitments on both sides are set, I don't see why women should be given the chance. With these two in place, plus of course the capabilities and the unique attributes of women to influence across various levels within the workforce, of coming, let's say, starting from the board to your senior management down to your workforce, initiatives will surely progress and attain its objectives. Also, successful projects are achieved not only because there are set of processes, policies, and technology solutions in place, but because of people's attributes and abilities. And the foundation in developing these abilities and attitude is rooted from the family, where women play a very crucial role together with men in making the basic building block of the society resilient. So those are my thoughts around it.
Absolutely.
Great.
Thank you, Mel. I think that was a great contribution and very great question, Khushbu. I think the first thing I tell most women is, even before you go on maybe maternity breaks or matrimonial breaks, ensure that you've proven yourself. When we're at work, let's come with our A game. Let's be excellent in what we do. There is no excuse, and there is no study or research that says that a woman should perform lower than a man. So in terms of your performance at work, be consistent, as much as you can, and bring your A game to the table at every time. Having said that, we know that when a woman needs to go on maternity breaks, depending on each individual, there could be varying circumstances. For example, some women, the first 3 months could be very challenging. Some people, it could be all through that they'll be sick. And there's nothing you can do about that. It's the law of nature. It's what has happened to you. You can control it. You can manage it as much as you can. And that's why I said it's important for you to, first of all, lay a good foundation and reputation for yourself in terms of the quality of work you deliver. Having said that, the first thing I will tell any woman when it comes to matrimonial or maternity breaks is, do not feel guilty. You have done nothing wrong, and they're not doing you a favor. Your organization is not doing you a favor by giving you maternity leave. You're contributing to the world by taking the step. So you don't need to feel guilty. And I will share a story. I like to share stories a lot. I'm sure you've noticed that. I remember the last time I had my last child about five years ago, thereabouts, or 4 or 5 years ago. And I'd worked so hard. I'd implemented a new project that was really significant. And I went on maternity leave. And I knew that typically I would have scored myself excellent in appraisal. Then I did my self-appraisal and I scored myself like borderline average, almost going to low, just because I'd gone on maternity leave. And my manager, who is a man at the time, my manager at the time, called me and said, why would you score yourself this low? You did a great work. Look at the project you led. Look at the achievements you had. But come on, raise your score. And I did. I've been very blessed to have had very great managers who have been supportive. But that's what happens. You just tell yourself, well, let me just be average. I don't want to rock the boat. I'm away for 4 months, for 6 months, for whatever period, and I don't want to rock the boat. So stop feeling guilty. You've earned it. You've worked. Before you go on your maternity break or matrimonial break, have a conversation, have your appraisal conversation, and do that and get out of the way. So that would be my charge to us to say, when we fully have the opportunity in terms of health, in terms of wellness, bring your A game forward. When you need to take time off due to maybe your health challenges or your pregnancy or your maternity challenges, be confident enough to ask for the support you need. I won't be able to resume at 8 a.m. I have morning sickness. I'll come in 2 hours late. Or I will work from home most of the time or half of the day to get myself together. Ask for it and do the best within your circumstances. And I think that's part of the equity we've been talking about. So, and when you're coming back as well, you don't need to come back feeling guilty, feeling like they've done you a favor. Resume with confidence, resume and take it from there. Yes, there's going to be a learning journey because you've been away for 6 months or 8 months or whatever period, depending on the country you're in. But just take it easy on yourself, just take it a day at a time and continue to just push forward. So that's what I will say in terms of women. That guilt has to stop. And no organization is doing you a favor by allowing you to go for your maternity leave. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you, Tercy. Tanya, your thoughts?
Yeah, honestly, I think Tercy and Mel captured it so well. So I don't have a whole lot to add. The only thing I will say is organizations also actually lose out on this, like especially in the tech space, right? Because the pace at which the skill sets required in tech is so rapidly moving that it's almost not a choice. If organizations want, let's say, historically, a technical leader within a role like engineering, director of engineering, let's say, right, randomly, they actually, we've seen, struggle a lot to find women who've come back quick enough from work that they stay in tune with what's happening. And that's something that we definitely kind of need to address, because either we encourage women, like what Teresi was saying, to embrace it and come back and still stay in tune with everything, and not take that 10 to 15-year break that could potentially mean that they are not on the same level playing field as other candidates. Or we figure out as organizations how to ensure that these people who are very, very valuable members of society are able to have the right access to upgrading their skills so that they stay in tune, especially within industries that are dynamically changing, like tech.
Absolutely. Vandana, your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. So my panelists have beautifully articulated things, because I could relate to my own pregnancy, where I had so many biases in my mind, whether I'll come back to work or not, whether I would be sad, or there were so many things that were going in my head. And it's just that we need to take them out of our head. That's very, very important. And Dorothy mentioned a very good point about the appraisal, where she rated not so good, but then a boss asked to change, because similar thing happened with me, where I was working throughout my pregnancy. Till Friday night, I was working, and the very next day I delivered the baby. So one thing I realized, that people, even if you feel that you are delivering a baby, that's part of the natural cycle. Everyone has to accept that, because there's nothing which is extraordinary, this is part of our life. This is a journey that we are all in together. So we have to understand that we have to respect the decision everyone makes in this. So when I came back from the maternity, in 3 months, I got my first promotion in the company. So I became the head of security for India. I was never anticipating that this could actually happen, because I had all my thoughts that what will happen to my job, how it'll happen. So I think we'll have to talk it out. It is very important to talk it out with our managers, our peers, our friends, our husband, everyone who's around us. We can actually take out those thoughts, because we have so many emotional roller coaster rides at that time. Another important thing that I did was negotiating flexible work arrangements, because that's very important. You cannot work all the time. You cannot work in a stipulated time. You have those morning sickness, as Toysi mentioned, and everyone. So there are so many things that goes around, doctor's appointments. So you can actually talk about flexible work arrangement. It could be part-time work, to job sharing, to making sure that you tell people of the team that, okay, can you take care of this for now, and then I'll take care of that for later. I used to work late hours very much, because I used to feel that in the morning I am not productive at all. So I was a late bird. I used to stay awake late and do those work. So that was my way of working. So you can ask for that. And then another thing which I did was I was connected with my professional network, be it over WhatsApp, be it over those connections, because that's very important to get to know what's happening around. And one thing I've learned is there are a lot of friends who didn't want to come back to work for a brief period, but then they made sure that they keep a tab on what's happening in the industry, and how I can keep myself updated. At least 15 minutes reading through those articles, 15 minutes connection with the friends, just hanging out, because it's not easy for the first 6 months to 1 year that you go out and do all of that stuff. So it's better that you stay home, learn those things, and just stay updated. That's what she did. And when she came back after 5 years, she was as solid as I would say I was in the industry, because she knew everything what was happening. She might not be hands-on, but she knew what was happening. So it was very easy to come back to work. And another thing is mentorship. It is very, very important to find the mentors, the people who understand you and what you are thinking. It is not always support. It's all about discussion. A lot of times I go back to my mentors and ask questions. They don't give me an answer. It is just that when I'm discussing with them, I get my own answer, that what I really want to do. There are times when they show me the guiding light. Okay, this could be possible. They don't give me a possible answer, but they guide me in such a way that it makes me feel that I've taken my own decision. So I think mentorship is very, very important. And then advocate. You need to advocate for yourself. You need to advocate for your own people and the people around you. It is like it's a beautiful journey. We have to embrace, we have to respect that. A lot of us want to go through, a lot of us maybe in a form of, it's not just about having a baby, it's about adopting a dog, adopting a cat. Maybe that's also a big decision in anyone's life, or adopting a baby. So it's just that let's respect and advocate about it. I think that's very important.
Fantastic. Lovely inputs, and it was a very critical question. I was doing a series on Wonder Woman in tech, and this was one question that every women that I interacted with had a story to tell, right? So, or had a perspective. So, thank you, all the panelists. My one last question before we end today's panel. If you could tell us which is the one powerful women that you admire the most, and you look up to in your life. So we could start with Simel, Tanya, and Vandana.
Okay, so I think mine would be coming from the monarchy, Catherine the Great, because she had been instrumental in the modernization in Russia, and she was able to establish the first all-girls school and did a lot more around social economics and science, as well as arts.
Fantastic.
All right, I think mine will be, there are actually quite a number of them. But the person that comes to mind at this point is Sheryl Sandberg. The reason I'm going with Sheryl is because she's also a woman in tech, and she's really, her advocacy and a book on leaning has really transformed how I see myself and how I show up, at work. Before then, I rather just want to be at the back scene, and I didn't want to, raise my hands or just be at the forefront. Typically, traditionally, you hear that woman should be at the back, supporting from behind. But I think following Sheryl and listening to, and, looking at her journey and reading her books and, listening to all of her articles has really changed my perspective in terms of how a woman should position herself at workplace. And also in general, how we need to raise our hands when those opportunities are there. And we don't need to feel like, it's a bad thing. So I would say Sheryl Sandberg for now. Thank you.
Is it my turn?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm actually going to go with something more personal, which is the two women in my family, my mother and my sister. We have a very much of a matriarch vibe in the fam, and they're super strong, super resilient, super powerful, and both very, very driven and determined. And as the youngest person in the family, they've both been incredible role models. In the external world, there's so many amazing women who've done so many amazing things that actually I would find it very difficult to choose just one. So yeah.
Got it. Vandana?
Yeah, actually, Tanya and I share the thoughts, because I wanted to say the same thing, because it starts from home. You have role models at home, and then they inspire you to become a different person. They inspire you to become a better person. So absolutely, mothers, sisters, and anyone who's making the change. So that's there. And there are actually two women I totally admire when it comes to cybersecurity. So Mel, I've known for like a few years now. And there's another lady called Katie Masuri. I'm a huge fan of her. The way she advocates for pay parity to advocating for women who are founders. That's totally incredible. And the way she has brought in the bug bounties in the world so that the hackers can get paid for what they find out. So that's totally incredible.
Wonderful. It was a great conversation with all of you, and thank you so much for taking out time, sharing your experiences, sharing your journey, your thought process with me and for my all viewers. It was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. And once again, a very happy International Women's Day to all of you. And I hope we are able to bring in any little change we can in with what we've been doing. I'm sure you all are successful. You guys are doing great in your personal and career life, and I'm sure there are people looking up to you as well. So you are an inspiration to a lot of people. So thank you for doing what you are doing, and thank you for being an inspiration to a lot of people in the world.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you.